And then when you hit go live, it records.
Oh, yeah, let me do that. Okay, well then we can probably get started. Um, we don't have to record because it grabs it.
Oh, that's right. Hey, Cindy, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, April. And tonight we're talking about how to travel with your friends and stay friends, which is hard to do sometimes, even with family,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Or you have a really great time, a relationship with a great friend, but then you don't go through the steps and you go on a trip and you might have a spat, or you didn't realize that they like to party all night and you wanted to go to bed, or they leave the TV on to go to sleep and you're like, I need it quiet. So there's just lots of things. So I think it's a
Yeah,
really important topic.
they absolutely, and they'll say that it like will make or break your relationship if you have, like you've just started a new romantic relationship, that like a trip can kill it or start
Yes.
it or whatever.
It's actually a really good test.
It
Jeff and I, like,
is.
we took a cross country train trip, and we say to this day, if we hadn't survived the cross country Amtrak train, that would have been that's the litmus test.
It's like, can I do this or not? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. I'm just going to move in a few things on my screen. There we go. So I can see the chat if anybody joins us and wants to ask questions. But we wanted to just talk about like some of the things that you can think about and how to prepare when you're traveling with friends or people that you already know, and to make sure that you end up, still friends at the end.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. Even if it's a romantic relationship and you
Right.
decide you're not interested, it's you want to keep friends. In today's world, you need more friends.
And it's terrible when you come home and you're like, oh, they've irritated you or frustrated you. And then it may be sour your relationship. So there are things you can do. And like everything else that April and I talk about, plan, plan, plan. So
Yeah.
plan ahead, know that, putting your relationship in a box and, self-contained for a long period of time could easily cause some issues. So be prepared for that. And so we'll talk about some of the things that you can do and think about before you embark on a trip, whether it's a 2-day thing or a 2-month thing with a friend or family member. So the first thing we wanted to talk about is just remember that the trip doesn't have to be all together all the time. You do not need to spend every moment, every activity, every meal with your traveling partner or partners.
I think
If
that's really important. Even if it's family,
yes,
set aside some guidelines ahead of time, or if it's your spouse or significant other, just say, you know what, I'm a morning person and I need to wake up and do my thing, whatever that is. If it's go down to the lobby and have a coffee by yourself, go out
right.
for a walk by yourself for an hour. That is super important time. And it's important to state that we need our private time a little bit.
Right, right. And I think just knowing, if going into it with the idea that we're not necessarily going to be together every minute, and saying that out loud to one another, that I expect that you'll want to have some time, or you might need to do things by yourself, or hey, it's okay if you want to do something I don't want to do. Like actually open that conversation, because that's a hard conversation to have on the trip, right? Is like,
Yes.
you're starting to irritate me now. I want to go do this, I want to have breakfast by myself. Like that makes it a deal. But if you
Right.
plan ahead of time that, I might need some time by myself, has nothing to do with you. I just need to, sometimes want to do things, alone. And that's for me. I think it'll give people that, acceptance. It makes that conversation during the trip a whole lot easier, right? If
Right.
you
If you've
talk
already
about it. Yes.
talked about it ahead of time, I think it's a whole lot easier. Because if you do bring it up like the day of or the night of, someone goes, you know what, I would just want to go down to the bar by myself. That your roommate, even
Yes.
sometimes they feel like, oh no, what did I
I
do? I
just,
mean, did I do
yeah.
something wrong today? Did I say something wrong? I mean, we all are self-conscious like that. And
Yeah.
when you're on a
Yeah.
trip, you just have that additional stress. You're in new places, sometimes new situations, and everybody's got different feelings towards travel.
Yeah. And then something that I would do is just plan to take some time, like you said, whether it's breakfast or something else, whether you need it or not, because your partner might need it. So it's
Right.
really good for you to just say, whether it's every morning I'm going to do my, coffee or my walk or my thing, or in the evening I like to do this and I will do this by myself. or if it's every couple of days, I want to do this, I plan to do a few things, put that in the work so that you can step aside. And maybe not even for you, maybe you're like, oh, what's going swimmingly, I'm fantastic with these, my friends or my family, and I don't need the time. But you don't know, maybe they need time away from you. So building that will make that work so much better. And again, having that conversation before you leave about what you're going to do, what you want to do independently, and that spending time alone does not mean I'm upset or mad or
Oh no, not at
hurt or
all.
anything like
Right.
that. Yeah, that it's just part of how it's going to be done. And so I think that that's like almost and we put it as the number one thing, and I think it's really the most important thing.
Yeah, I think we should have bumped it up to number one. It's just to automatically plan some time apart and
Yes.
just openly state, yourself. We all know ourselves, like if we prefer to have that downtime in the morning or the afternoon. Even when we work in a job situation,
Yeah.
oftentimes we want to go to that quiet space, or after work we just decompress in the car ride by ourselves. So think about it that way.
Yeah.
Allow yourself an hour, 2 hours. If you normally do something like that, work that into the trip. I think that's
Yeah. And
super
it's
important.
good point to think about if you're normally living alone, right? So if you
Yes.
live alone and now you're going to go travel with a friend, you may not realize how overwhelming that's going to be on day 4. And this person's like stuck to your side and it's your best friend or your, a family member who you love, but it's like, oh my God, I need just like breathing moment. So planning that will make a huge difference. And speaking of that, we were talking about also like making sure that there's no issues with your relationship, or at least acknowledging whatever those are, because every relationship has its challenges and, no one's perfect. Everybody has issues with their friends and family. So just sort of, I don't even know if you need to talk about it necessarily. I suppose it would matter what it is with the family member, but acknowledging like this person's a bit whiny sometimes. And I know that
Right.
about my dear friend. So I'm just going to have to like
Or
kind of be
sometimes, yeah, and
prepared
it's
for
just
that or,
right. And it's like thinking through on your
mhm,
own, like kind of the red flags, I call them. Sometimes we get that gut feeling like,
yeah.
oh, wow, look at how she dresses and puts herself together. She looks fabulous. Well, that may take an hour. She may come
Yeah.
with 3 suitcases, and
Yeah.
you're only going to bring a carry-on and a backpack, or less.
Yeah.
So, just you don't want to get irritated by that. And, or
Right.
she needs the bathroom for X amount of time. These are things to kind of think through. Or like, I have friends that love going out, having a few drinks and whatever. And if that's not something I'm going to enjoy every single night, it's important I just say, hey, you know what? I need my quiet time. I'm not
Yep.
going to join you every night. Then they're not expecting it. They're not feeling hurt. And likewise, I'm not feeling like, oh, she's sick of me.
Right. Yeah. Or you're not feeling like, oh, are they hurt because I don't go? Like you get all that.
Right.
And again, just kind of thinking about what issues or what challenges you have when you go out to dinner or in the current relationship. What are those things and how are you going to handle that when you're cooped up together with them for
Yeah.
long periods of time? Yeah, because there might be some people that you would know probably don't want to travel with, and don't ruin a friendship over travel with somebody else. I have friends who I love, but they're not the people that I really can travel with because we don't have enough things in common, and over days and days we would irritate each other, not because we don't like each other, we just don't do enough of the stuff together
Right.
to make it worth going. And I think we can be adults and acknowledge that. What else? We had a couple. What's
Oh yeah,
there?
we have more things. Well, that kind of segues into like when planning your trip, planning together, which I know is actually at the bottom, but it kind of needs to come into place sooner. Often one person kind of enjoys doing more of the planning, and so they
Yes,
naturally, like you and I, Cindy,
you and I.
we
Right,
both love to travel, so we'd both be like, hey, I'll plan it. But
right,
it's important to allow even a non-planner or someone who claims like, oh no, you just plan it, I'll go
right.
along with whatever you do, that you get their input on something. Even if you choose like 3 places to stay,
Yeah.
send them, email them, say, hey, I'm looking at these 3 places, I'm okay with any of them, what do you think?
Right, exactly. I think asking and making sure, almost forcing them that, because I have those friends, right? I'm a neurotic planner, and in my family too, be like, oh, just do whatever you want, right? It's fine. Anything, Cindy, you want to do, but you know that they're also going to go on the trip and go, really, this is what you chose?
Right. Yeah. I don't,
And
yeah, same
so
thing. It's like, I don't want to hear from my dad later. Like, really, this parking lot, you expect me to park 3 blocks and walk and, whatever it
right.
is, you gotta.
And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll pick 3 or 4 things that I want to do. And then I'll say, you pick from here. Here's on Thursday, we could do these 3 museums. We can only do one. Which one do you want to do? Like, don't not overwhelm the non-planner, because the non-planner,
Right.
that's why they're letting you plan, because they don't want to do it. But just sort of forcing them to make some choices so that when they're on the trip, they can go, oh, this is the museum I chose, or I chose this hotel, or
Yeah.
this is the restaurant that I selected. I can thank you for putting that in. So it feels more like a
They're a part
mutual.
of it. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you go with a large group of people, like say you go with 4 or 5 family members, have everybody plan one day.
Yes.
Like you can split the planning. So I think that's really important. Like you said, plan together, even if your friends and family are like, no, no, you plan it all.
Right. And you can always assign them something simple. I know we interviewed someone that did that cross country family
Yeah,
trip.
that's
And,
right.
even if it's the music or the playlist, or
Yes.
like, hey, Tuesday, I've got these activities, you pick, and I'll go along with what you like, because these are all things I want to do too. And I'm having
Yes.
trouble narrowing down one museum. Sometimes
Yeah.
there's too many of the same kind of art museum or whatever it is. But
Yeah. Yeah. And as we're talking about planning, the other thing was to make sure that everybody who joins gets a must see, must do list of things. Now, of course, you're not going to, I never get everything done, right? You want to go to Paris, or you want to go wherever, and the list is so long that it's not going to happen. You'd have to be there for 7 years to finish it all.
yeah.
But there's often like 1 or 2 things, like I don't want to leave the country or leave the city without having seen, done this thing. So I like picking like 2 to 3 of them, and everybody gets that many. Sometimes you might share them with your friend or family member, but if you don't, at least you make sure what the other one really wanted to do, and
Oh,
and they
yeah.
and they come home having done that, whether it's just drive by that. I mean, I know for my brother, sometimes when him and I were traveling, he's like, I don't really need to go in, I just want to see it. It's like, oh, okay, then that we
Yeah.
can make that part of the deal, right? We can drive by
Right.
there. And he doesn't care. Typically he'll let me plan it, but lots of things, gives you suggestions. So it's really helpful to get that from everybody, their must sees and must do's, right?
Yeah, exactly. The next big thing I think that needs to be covered is budget. I think
Oh,
money is
yes.
for it. I mean, we all have a friend that, has a really big travel bank account ready to go
Not
splurge.
us.
Right, not me. But and if I'm going to be all, but and you need to have that conversation ahead of
Yes.
time. You don't want to be standing, you're both hungry at the end of the day, looking at a restaurant menu, and you're uncomfortable maybe spending that much. The other person's like, it doesn't look nice enough. Whatever it is, it needs to be
Yeah.
kind of worked out ahead of time.
Yeah, really making sure. And I think what we were talking about was, kind of making sure you're on the same trip. It's both from a budget perspective as well as what you're doing. Because um, for me, spending the money isn't part of the trip, right? It's not, I'm not looking for luxurious things, although some of those things are cool once in a while. Maybe I do a couple on my trip, but most of the time my trip isn't about that. But for other people, it's their one trip a year. They take 7 days or the one week, and they really just want to be pampered, and they want to spend a lot of
Right.
money and, eat great food and go to the spa, and that's fantastic. That's a totally different kind of trip than what I'm taking. So just kind of making sure that we're trying to accomplish the same thing, both from a goals, like what I want when I come home kind of thing,
Right.
as
Right.
well as like a budget. Are we on the same page with that? Because otherwise, like I said, with some friends, it's like, you're going to be over there in that, $40 for dinner tonight, and I'm going to be getting street food for
Right. Yeah,
$2.99.
exactly. I'm
And
taking the plate back to my room and
yeah. And I'm
see
eating
you
that for
later.
lunch tomorrow
Right.
too. Like I've got all these budget plans. So for sure, thinking about, what your trip feels like. I think that's a good conversation to have. Like, what do you want? And maybe even talking about previous trips, like your best trip. Like if you've never traveled with
Yeah.
this person, talking to your friend or family member about some of your best trips and what you really enjoyed, and just seeing if there's a connection there,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
how that would work too. That's a really hard thing. Oh, we have safety. Oh,
Yeah,
let's talk about that.
safety.
That's again,
That's a really good one, and
it
I think
is.
that it can make a lot of people uncomfortable. Like some people are really open. It kind of falls into the talking to strangers and locals too.
Yes,
Like, for some people that can feel unsafe. They're in a new country. Maybe they don't
right.
know the language. They feel vulnerable just because maybe they haven't traveled as much as maybe you or I or the person going with us has. So talking that through ahead of time. I know you've had some incidences, Cindy, too, where
Right. Yeah. Where there's some safety issues where you don't want your friends or partner to disclose information. You're out and you're having a nice meal and they introduce themselves to somebody and we're all talking. And I'm pretty outgoing. I'll talk to strangers
yeah.
at the restaurant or at a bar. I feel very comfortable doing that, or even on the street. I'm totally good with that. But I had a friend of mine give a gentleman our hotel address and hotel where we were staying. And I was really uncomfortable with that. I was like, wait a minute, what did you just do? He didn't seem creepy or odd or anything. That's just like that. For me, that's a line I wouldn't cross, right? If I wanted to meet up with this person tomorrow to have them show us something or talk about something, I would have picked just, same safety rules I do here.
Yeah.
It's like a public place outside of my home. And I consider the hotel or hostel or wherever I'm staying my home, and I wouldn't share that with strangers. And so just talking about your rules, right? Like what are my rules and what do I feel comfortable with? There's no right or wrong. I'll say that too. Like there are things that I wouldn't do, but others are comfortable doing. And it's a matter of understanding where your comfort level is, because that can really ruin a trip.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
find that your partner that you're traveling with is like out doing stuff that makes you feel unsafe, that's not gonna, you're just, that's all gonna be on your mind, right?
Right,
That's all you're gonna
right.
think about.
And
And then,
it comes down to too, like even posting online. I mean,
yes,
sometimes if I'm traveling solo or just with a couple of people, again, I'll be really outgoing with locals or who I'm meeting along the way, but I don't necessarily, again, I don't want them to know where I'm going to be right this minute because you just don't
yeah,
know who's following along, so to speak. And it's
yeah.
to me, it's just better, I don't mind if you email those pictures to your friends or family, but maybe I'm not comfortable with you posting it publicly, and saying,
Yes.
hey, April and I are, right
Yeah.
here on this corner, and tomorrow we're going to be right here, right there. That kind of starts to make me feel a little uncomfortable.
And you're bringing up a good point, because when we're talking about social media, I'm having a flashback of a previous trip. Ask about tagging people.
Yeah, that is
Please get
true.
permission to tag your partners and your friends, because that can, I mean, I may be comfortable posting I'm here and I'm doing this. But if I tag you, now everybody knows that April's also here with me too. And
Right.
especially for somebody, because I do live alone most of the time. And when you're living alone, your home is alone. So you don't want anybody to know that you're out of town. Like sometimes
Yes.
I may travel.
Right.
I don't want people to know that I'm gone. And like you said, you don't want them to know where you're going next. Like tomorrow we're going to be here. So it's not just you posting and when you're tagging people. So have those safety conversations. Think about the things that concern you from a safety perspective, and make sure you talk to your partner about, like, your travel partner, sort of like what are their concerns, and are you on the same level, right? As I said, I
Yes.
don't want to say
Right.
there's a right or wrong. There are some crazy things you probably shouldn't do, but there's a big gray area of like what you could do and what somebody else might be comfortable doing, and that could ruin the whole trip if somebody puts you in jeopardy or makes you feel like you are anyway.
Right. And tagging is a big one. I've had that come up
Yes.
on some of my group tours as well. Even people have asked me, because oftentimes I want to collect group pictures to use later.
Yes.
I need their permission. I've had people on my trip say, hey, April, I don't want to be in any of the pictures. I don't want to be tagged. So
Right.
you really need to ask. And you want to know that it's better that I know that up front on day
Yes.
one, because I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable that I'm like, oh, go over there while if I already know, I can pick a time or pick a way to do it in such a way that you don't feel,
Well, and if you've had that
pulled
conversation,
out.
if I take pictures of us together and I've already know that I'm not supposed to tag you, you're not like, oh, don't take my pic. Because I've had people say, don't take my picture, right?
Yeah,
It's because they don't want to be tagged. And so,
right.
no, I won't tag you and I won't post like if you know already, the pictures can be taken, they can be posted after the trip. You won't
Yeah.
tag them, you'll be respectful. And it's really, I mean, some of those conversations are awkward in the moment. Like when
Yeah.
you, wait a minute, what did you just do? You took a picture of
I
me
know.
and you tagged me. And now you have to, like, that becomes an uncomfortable conversation. So much easier to have over lunch with your friend, your girlfriend, or your family member before you go.
Right,
To be
exactly.
sure about that kind of stuff.
And also really quick on safety
Yeah,
too, if you're spending time apart, I think it's fair to make an agreement like, hey,
yes.
when do you think you'll be back? I mean, again,
Mm,
it's just for your own safety as well. Like if I don't, if you don't text me, you're going to be back here in an hour. Are we meeting in 2 hours? Or are you going
right.
to call me? Do you want me to call you? Check in with each other. Again, it's just that safety thing. I know oftentimes when I'm solo for a day, even a lot of times I'll leave and go do a walk. Maybe I'll just tell the front desk person, I'll say, hey, are you here for the next X hours? I am going
Right.
X. If I don't come back, I want
Right.
someone to be,
Right.
it's nice to have someone looking for me right away.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that's a very good point, April, is to make sure that your partner knows how long to wait for you, right? Like if you decided to separate for the afternoon and now you're an hour late, is that, at what point do I panic, right? Do I
Right.
panic 2 hours? When do I get concerned? And again, just talking about safety, and I will say, my daughter who said for years, bring a Band-Aid, you won't need a Band-Aid. So I'm a big fan of plan for the disaster and it won't happen. So whether that's just putting it out in the universe or because you planned, you have it in your head and you make better decisions. I don't know, but either way, it always works. Just planning for those situations. And then I'm going to talk just briefly about the plan B option. This is something we talked about before. It's the worst case scenario, which is what happens if you can't continue with your friend or family member? Thinking about whether or not that's something you want to do, whether or not that's even an option, right? So if it's a short
Yeah.
trip and you're with your parents or your kids or whatever, then you're probably not going to be able to just sort of bail, right?
Right.
But if you're with a girlfriend or a friend from work or something along those lines, you might just say, I'm gonna, go on the rest of the trip on my own, especially if it's a long trip. But
Yes.
having that in your head, is there an option to separate with the group, even for a day or even,
Or even, I mean, worst case
yeah,
scenario, like you said, I mean, maybe you've met a group of like what you thought were like-minded travelers online. I
right?
know a lot of people are meeting new people. We're all anxious to travel. And you thought, oh, it sounded so great. But by day three, maybe you just realize
This is
I'm
it.
really different than this. And I don't want to spend the rest of my trip like this, having that plan B. And maybe you need to just have that in place ahead of time. Like you already know, like, how far I am away from the airport, how much it may cost to get my own Uber. Can I
Right,
fly out of a different airport?
right. Well,
Oftentimes I try to look at that when I have a group trip as well. Like, is there a place for them to bail if
they're
something
not working.
happens, if it's not working out for them or
Yeah,
the rest of us or whatever it might
whatever.
be?
Yeah,
Things happen.
and I honestly think, again, back to the bring a Band-Aid, you won't need a Band-Aid. I do think that once you have it in your head that you have the ability to leave if you want, right? That I have a plan, then you'll be better at saying no. I don't want to go, or I don't want to eat that, or I don't, you're just like, your boundaries will be stronger, which will then allow you to, maybe the trip overall will be better and you won't have to bail because you'll say
Right,
that. But if
right.
you actually feel like, well, I'm just stuck with this no matter what, then
Yeah.
I think then it can just get icky, right? The whole thing.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
definitely thinking about, is bailing an option?
Yeah,
Because it might be, and
absolutely.
it might not be, as well as like, what would that look like? And would you
Right.
bail for a period of time? Or would you bail for the whole trip? And just kind of run through that scenario on your own. And then and you might even talk about it, especially if it's a new friend. I know in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about how to meet travel partners online. And I have some stories, and I'm going to hold that one for that
Yeah.
session of some friends of mine who met online and traveled together. And, if you meet online and you travel together, it could be a beautiful thing, and then it could be a horrible thing, and you need to separate. And I think, again, having that conversation ahead of time, that if it's not going well, we're not going to jeopardize our ability to be friends, or our ability to enjoy the trip just to be together. That's silly,
Right,
right?
right. And
So,
even in a family situation, it may
mhm,
be such that you have, kind of goes back to those relationship issues. I mean, sometimes with
right,
family members, you have some deep issues and you're trying to do something together, maybe for a week. And so,
right.
could you just step out of the trip, so to speak, or take a break for a couple of days and meet up closer to the end, the last 2 days of the trip, and and just take it on yourself, like, hey, I need some time alone, whatever it looks like. But then it
Right.
does, I think it gives you a little bit of empowerment
Right.
and may save the relationship
It
in the
might.
end. Because as your uncomfort level grows,
Yes.
butting heads tends, you're going to blow up over dinner one night, or who
Yeah,
knows
and
what it
and you get
is.
frustrated over little things because you're
Yeah,
already irritated. So it is
right.
definitely a good idea to think about that. And I don't want to end on like
Nope.
on a negative note because this is like the worst case scenario. So let's just talk some more about planning sort of together and how you can do that. I don't know what tools or how you do that. How do you plan with your family members and stuff, April? Do you have some things that you use?
Yeah, sometimes we each make a spreadsheet. I know we're fans of Excel. I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of new online apps that you can use
Yes.
to do this, but a lot of the people in my family, we love to do the research too. So,
Right.
once we settle on a route or a group of cities, then it's like, well, hey, you go look in there and see if there's some things to do. Like you said, making that list of like, hey, this is a must see on my list, and maybe ranking it like, on this day, this is a top item, and these are some other things I found, and then we compare notes. And like
Yeah.
with the lodging, oftentimes they'll leave me to like, hey, you find the lodging. These are kind of the parameters and the budget range that we want to be in. And then I email them some selections, or with clients too.
Yeah.
Here's kind of what your budget range is. Here's 3 places I would recommend, and
Mhm.
why it looks like these look like good choices if I haven't personally stayed there. If it's a client, a lot of times I've obviously stayed there and can say, I like this
Yes.
one because of X, or that one's better because of this. And
Right. I will say one of the things that I used a few years ago and is still a valid method to plan together is Pinterest.
oh
So on
yeah,
Pinterest, you can create a shared board. And then and how cool is it? You're reading an
that's cool.
article and you can just pin the article and then you can write a little note like, we should go here. And if you share that with your group or with your partner, whoever it is, especially if you don't live together, you're
Yeah,
planning, because lots of times you're planning with somebody who
right.
lives somewhere else, and then they can go in and go, what was this thing you penned? And oh, I read the article, that looks cool. And it's really nice to get kind of excited about the trip. And as you said, there's lots of apps out there. Maybe you should do another session on just some of the
We'll have to
apps you
do,
can do
yeah,
for
there's a lot of new apps that make
travel
it
stuff.
super easy. So yeah,
Yeah.
we should do a ticketing
So
system. Hop into chat and just see if
yeah.
anyone's made any
Oh,
comments. I
there's
don't.
a ton of comments. So I see that
Oh,
Kathy
great.
Dunn is here. Hi, Kathy. So good to see you. And she gave us some comments about these are great. And Mike mentioned Splitwise to share expenses. That's a really good tool like that.
Yep.
We'll have to share that. And Mary says she's not posting pictures either until she's gone. And WhatsApp is easy to use to stay connected. People are talking about Facebook Messenger, which is also really good internationally. So all of those tools are really helpful to stay connected. Yeah,
Yeah, and we
great.
should do it. We should do a session because there are a lot of just the planning and how to plan and
Yeah,
how to compare notes. I think that's a really good session, and there are some fun things out there to, put links or put pictures of the different locations and put it
yeah,
on a. My dad's a big map fan, so a lot of times he'll go into MapQuest and show
yeah.
us how far it is from the sites and if we can walk there, and what works out in a day. So we let him kind of do some of that routing stuff.
That's great. I'm gonna. We also have a list of questions, folks. For those that Elisa's here, I see lots of. Thank you guys for watching.
Yay!
We created a list of questions, 25 questions to get you started. Um, if you're planning a trip with a friend or family member, you just go here. I'll put the link in the chat. It's the MailChimp
And
link.
if you signed up on Meetup, I know some of the new Meetup events. I did collect your email address, and I'll just go ahead and send that out to you guys as well, so that if you missed this live session, you'll automatically get those. And
Yeah. And so if you go to follow the link that I just posted, I think I got it in there. It didn't go the first time, so I apologize if you see it twice. But the 25 questions are just a lot of things we've been talking, but there's even more, lots of things to just think about. You don't need to answer all of the questions with your partner, but it's to stimulate thought, right? Things to think about. And I know April and I are a big fan of plan, right? Plan,
Yeah,
think
exactly.
ahead.
I think if you plan ahead, like you said, carrying the Band-Aid, carrying, having the rain jacket, whatever it
Yeah,
might be, hopefully you don't have to use it.
and you
And
don't need it.
hopefully, right, you don't need it and you have a much better trip. You have some great memories and great photos and you
Yeah,
return with those that last a
yeah.
lifetime.
And let us know if you've had a great travel experience. That might be something, maybe we would do a quick interview, talk to some folks who've traveled with a family member that turned out fantastic. We would love to discuss with you. Maybe we'll make that a coffee chat to hear your good and bad stories, but I don't want to interview the bad stories. We don't want to highlight those. But if you've had, especially if you met someone and you just sort of traveled with them and how well that went, that might be a good conversation for our folks. All right. Look,
All right.
it's right at 6:30.
I know. Really quick for anyone
Yes.
that's new to us, Saturday, I know the weather's getting great and everyone's
Yes.
getting outside, but if you're around, it's 9 o'clock West Coast time, noon on the East Coast. Maybe you can grab coffee, a cold drink, pop on our coffee chats. They're a lot of fun. This week, the topic is, what is the topic? It was
culinary travel.
And we love to talk food and your favorite restaurants, your favorite street foods, whatever it is. And hope you'll join us for that. And the hour before that, 8 a.m. West Coast, which would be 11 East Coast. And I don't know, these states that aren't doing jump ahead yet is kind of confusing. We'll be talking to 3 different travelers. We've just started posting some great new events, and you can watch the past video. Cindy's leading a camping trip in Napa. Sheila's going to San Antonio, and Lisa in Tuscany. But this week, 3 surprise new trips. They are being posted on the meetups, and you can meet the actual guides and ask your questions on Saturday. So,
okay, well,
so much new stuff happening, but we better stop and.
Folks are having trouble getting the link, so I just tried to post it again in the chat. And I don't know, maybe it's just restricting me from posting something because we're on.
Maybe right after we could put it in comments or
I will definitely put it in the show notes for sure. So if you come back to it, the recorded one in a few minutes, you'll see it there. I will add it as soon as we get off here. So you can find the 25 questions if you didn't get it in the chat. Now I'm going to have to figure out why I can't chat.
Yeah, that's odd. Yeah, why you can't chat?
That's weird. So, all right, guys, thanks so much. And we will hopefully see you